Welcome to the Time for a Reset podcast, the podcast where I, Paul Frampton, interview senior marketers on the big issues of the day and the thing that they want to see reset with an ever-changing landscape. Welcome back to another episode of Time for a Reset. I'm your host, Paul Frampton, and today I'm delighted to be joined by Lou Bennett, who's the marketing director at Benefit Cosmetics. Lou has always worked in retail, has a love of brand, and is very passionate about the behind the scenes in the businesses she's worked in, and also believes passionately that integration and breaking silos is a key role for a marketer. Prior to Benefit Cosmetics, Lou was at Arnott's as head of marketing and also worked at the Irish Times. So really delighted to have you this morning. How are you, Lou?
I'm very good, Paul. Thank you. Very good.
On this cold December morning.
Cold December, but yeah, very hot time of the year in terms of retail. So it's all good.
Yeah, well, I'm sure we'll get on to talk about that a little because you were sharing with me before we started how much time you're spending in retail, kind of picking up what's happening. So I'd love to touch on that in a second. But before we do, where we always start, Lou, is to ask our guests, if you had a big red button that said reset on it for the marketing industry, what's the thing that you would hit reset on to change?
I think for me, it would have to be perspective, because we've been through, as a marketing community and as anybody who works in retail, or pretty much anyone in general over the last few years, just so much in terms of consumer confidence crises, general economic crises. Like, there seems to be always something to worry about or something to get in the way and cause distress. So, this time of year, I think is a great time to actually stop and say, okay, if I just refresh my own perspective, what would I change and what would I really prioritize in terms of what's important going forward? So good time of year to do that.
Absolutely. And a busy time of year for you in what you do and the lead up to Christmas. So you were sharing with me before we started recording the fact that you're spending most of the time between now and for the guest benefit, the listeners' benefit, we are at the beginning of December. You're going to spend most of the rest of this month in retail in different parts of the country, right?
Yeah, I think it's a really important thing to do, because data, of which we now have so much of, only tells you so much on a screen. And if you really want to get a temperature check on the business and the customer, it's not just about the business, but like your own team and your own customer, you really have to stand in the same environment that they do. So we as a business do this all year long. We spend the guts of a week every month in different stores in different cities up and down the country. But in the month of December, we tend to spend a couple of weeks in a row out there, because we're trying to A, cover the whole country as much as we can, and B, thank the teams in person for everything that they're doing, and then C, just really get a sense of what is happening in every city, how it varies from city to city, how it varies from store to store, what's the experience like, what could we be learning, what could we do better, what are our customers and teams seeing every day. So, you don't get that through data on screen, you just don't. So it's really important for us to have the data, but also have the real life experience as well.
I love that. And I think that's a great call out. I mean, it's kind of an obvious thing, but I do feel that quite often marketers have a habit of staying inside their HQ and not necessarily being out there with the customers. So it's wonderful to hear that you as a business and you individually put so much focus on being there. And I really took out of what you said, that it's not just about being there and seeing behavior, but also understanding how your customers are feeling. And as you said at the beginning of this, with the cost of living crisis, the crunch, only just come out of pandemic, people aren't feeling great. But yet, obviously, one of the things that people continue to love spending their money on is beauty.
Yeah, the beauty industry has been incredibly resilient, especially over the last couple of years. Like, I was at an industry event during the week, and they noted that the financial industry, had been referring to the beauty industry as the most resilient sector across industry over the last couple of years. And I really would agree with that, because beauty is about making people feel good. Now, not everybody does a great job at that in terms of, brand message and brand purpose, but people turn to beauty when they want an instant boost. It's not a luxury handbag. It's not an expensive holiday. the new treat for somebody could be, heading to a department store and picking up a new mascara, or,
Right.
a new brow product, or whatever that looks like. So it's really important that we serve the people well that want to do that. And it's really important that we serve the people well who we ask to do that in terms of our own team. So, yeah, beauty's been pretty resilient. It's obviously completely changed. It hasn't, I guess, in some ways over the last couple of years as a result of the pandemic, because
Mm.
it's such a sensory experience. And, for 12 months, nearly 24 months, we didn't really have access to the environments to do that in the way we would traditionally do it in terms of store discovery and store experience. So, you pivot to other channels. But now that we have our stores back open again, and the majority of most beauty brands will do their business in stores, it's really important that we get a sense of what that new landscape actually looks like for everybody.
Right. No, and that makes a lot of sense to me. But obviously, even prior to the pandemic, there was a big growth in beauty e-commerce and kind of D2C kind of propositions. I guess like Look Fantastic, that would sell kind of beauty products purely through e-commerce. So how has that kind of shift changed the way that Benefit thinks about its go-to-market? And like post-pandemic, are there things that you do now that you wouldn't have done previously?
Yeah, I mean, the fundamental bullseye of our go-to-market strategy is, where's the customer? So we've had a really agile, we've got quite a mature mix of business when it comes to the online mix of our business, because we've been active online and quite innovative from an online perspective and a D2C perspective for the last 15, 20 years. So while it's a much bigger mix of our business now, the foundations, 10 years ago are already fairly solid. Look Fantastic, actually, you mentioned them, are a really good partner of ours. They're a really important partner of ours. But we're incredibly widely distributed from an online and in-store perspective, and our own D2C sits in the middle of that. It gives us a massive opportunity to make sure that we serve a lot of different customers across different channels, and make sure that everybody's getting the proposition that's right for them based on where they are in their shopping journey. But, yeah, it's definitely changed. I wouldn't say it's brought about, like when we talk about the pandemic, things we would never do, because I think the pandemic expedited an awful lot of change that was going to happen anyway. The level of like digital discovery, the level of tech innovation, I think that was all coming. It's just come at us much, much quicker. And there are loads of technologies, like the explosion of TikTok, for example,
Yes. Yeah.
and the level of discovery happening through phones and through AR tools, etc. All amazing, brilliant. We welcome all of those things. And we're incredibly active.
Sorry, Lou. I was going to say, I suppose some of that technology changes helped you to be able to create some of the sensory experience through digital channels. I mean, clearly, it's not quite the same as being with somebody helping you choose the kind of specific kind of product you want, and a kind of looking at you and thinking about skin tone or whatever else. But presumably things like TikTok and AR are closing the gap a little bit, so that actually if people are buying through purely digital, you can give a bit more of a rich experience than you could have done 5 years ago.
Yeah, exactly. And it's really about understanding where in the ecosystem does that particular experience sit, because, the majority of customers, the majority of beauty transactions for most brands still happen in a store. The store business, like the brick and mortar business, is in growth consistently and has been since the big reopening post pandemic. Online is starting to shift a little bit. We're doing brilliant things from an innovation perspective around TikTok live selling. So we're one of the pioneer brands doing that, and doing that incredibly well. But it really is about understanding, for us anyway, as a beauty brand, and quite a successful beauty brand. We're almost 50 years old, been the number one premium beauty brand in the UK market for a long time. We need to understand what role each channel plays. And actually, I think that's where you create brilliant harmony, because I think if you go down the road of thinking it's online or it's offline, you're on a lose-lose, because that's not how the customer actually shops. And, we know from the hierarchy of product purchasing per channel what that level of appetite for each product actually is. We know when customers want to stand in front of a team member. We know when customers want to replan online. We know when customers want to try a bit of AR at home. Like, but all of those things are such brilliant additions to what was quite a, online, offline, formulaic, ecosystem, 5, 6 years ago. So I actually think in that sense, I'll never admit to saying the pandemic was positive, but I do think in that sense, in terms of driving, innovation much quicker and being customer centric much quicker, has had some really positive effects.
Nice. No, I really like the way you articulated that, Lou. I think actually a lot of businesses have started to think about how you create a more, let's call it seamless customer experience between those kind of different routes to market or channels, whereas previously they might have been quite separate. And I mentioned in your intro, because you shared it with me, that you're a big believer in breaking silos. And I guess customer experience is everybody's business within a business almost. Almost everyone, maybe with the exception of the back office, but of course they play a role, it is involved in it. So how in your experience does marketing, I guess, co-functionally work with all the other parts of the business, operations, IT, kind of in store, to make sure that actually your ideal kind of marketing kind of customer experience is coming to life?
Yeah, I mean, it has to all work hand in hand. Like, you, you don't work hand in hand all the time, and where it's appropriate. That's really important. But if you have to get anything to the customer, a product, a message, any kind of awareness, you cannot do it in a silo. And if you do it in a silo, it's just not going to be sustainable. I'm really lucky enough to work for a business that really puts the cross-functional collaboration front and center at, what is important behind the scenes. We have a brilliant GM, Sarah, who really drives that. And as a result, we work really closely together. If I give you an example over the pandemic, there's 5 directors in our business. We literally meshed into one person almost during the pandemic, because the 5 of us made decisions collectively for the health of the business across every function. And that's kind of the way we've always worked, but it was so important during the pandemic that was already an authentic, seamless process. And as a result, we work with our teams then in that way. So, it's really important that it's cross-functional behind the scenes, because I don't know about other businesses or other industries where maybe, siloed, working is effective. But any business I've worked in before, and it's never been as strong as it is at Benefit, it's really about the power of the partnership and the power of understanding everybody's role. Like the way I explained to you about the time that we spend in stores every month, so almost a week a month in stores, it's the GM, it's myself, it's the head of retail, and we make cross-functional decisions in the moment on the shop floor. So for us, that's about taking the cross-functional piece up a level. But we want the customer to have the best service, and we want our teams to have the best experience serving the customer. There's so many functions involved in that happening. So, it's kind of second nature to us, to be honest.
No, and listening to you, it very much sounds like that. I think a lot of businesses really struggle with cross-functional, and you're seeing lots of consultant presentations that there's identification that actually there isn't great cross-functional collaboration, and it sounds like Benefit has it ingrained into its culture. But it's that, but like 5 people having to make every decision must still be challenging. Did you guys actually contract with each other in a different way about how you would show up to make that seamless? Because I'm sure at points there must have been different perspectives. It wasn't always, oh yeah, we're all aligned, let's make one decision. So how did that practically actually work?
I mean, the one thing I would say or clarify is that, we might make the decisions, but there's hundreds and hundreds of people involved in executing, informing, improving. We're a business that takes ideas from everywhere, and we're a business that's really not very hierarchical, which I think serves us really well, because we're very open and we're very flexible. And as a very agile business, that helps us stay agile. We commit across the business to ways of working, almost like, it's not in a formal way, but SLAs really across the teams, that we have very structured time together, but then a very open flow of communication in between. So we're led by a GM who believes we work more effectively together.
Yeah, which is
And
great.
be our mission statement in terms of how we show up for the customer is really about being a beauty community that's inclusive and, is built on our brand statement, which is, to feel good and do good. And that really started internally. That's how we engage with each other internally. It's our commitment to each other as a business internally, no matter the function. And having a mandate across the business where, ideas come from anywhere is brilliant because everybody's so empowered to contribute, and as a result lots of people do contribute. And we have in our business not just functions and teams and people, but customers. I think we're looking at our target customer actually is the majority of our workforce. So that's really important, that we listen and that we take action as well, and that we're seen to take action, and feedback as well. So really important.
Yeah, I mean, you're clearly very passionate about that culture, but listening to you describe it, it sounds like it's a very progressive culture, and what many struggle to turn from culture and behaviours or values into reality. In fact, it sounds like Benefit does a very good job of putting the customer and the employee or the team member very much at the core of its thinking. So thank you for sharing that. In the same or a similar vein, how important do you see marketing within the business? And I'll tell you, the reason I ask this question is sometimes when I ask this to guests, they'll say, marketing's at the top table. Obviously, the CMO sits on the board, and we have kind of key influence over other strategic and operational decisions. And other times people will say, there's no board position. Marketing is seen as a function and is a fairly kind of reactive business. So I'm just interested in how it works where you work today, but also just your general view about, is marketing at the top of the boardroom agenda?
I mean, obviously I will have a view as a marketer, but let me not talk myself out of a job here, but
I don't want to do that, of course.
You can't, if you strip it right back in terms of the whole point of marketing is to make customers aware of your products or services and help them make that buying decision, help add that product to basket, help add that service to a routine. I struggle to think of a successful or iconic brand or product or business that's done that without marketing as part of the integrated center, So, and any business I've worked in where it hasn't been a seamless, consideration, the results are never as good. I guess it does depend on the business and the function, but I think where you've got a product or a service to sell, marketing is primarily the function that's really important for making sure that people are aware of the product or service, and then what's your point of difference versus everybody else, and then what feeling, when somebody has a transaction with a brand or business and they walk away, they either close the laptop or they walk out of the store. The way I see it is, it's us as the marketing department that are responsible for the feeling they have when they walk away. We measure ourselves in terms of this is going to sound really flippant, but the warm and the fuzzies. We want somebody to feel really seen, loved, acknowledged, thanked, respected, included, whether you're a team member or a customer. And that's what sits as part of my responsibility within the marketing function. But like I said to you earlier about the cross-functional stuff, if the marketing plan only sat on my desk and didn't involve operations, didn't involve retail, didn't involve training or HR, it's never authentic when it gets to the customer because it's not lived all the way through.
Absolutely. Yeah, no, very, very well said. And I think I detected you were also kind of making the case that actually if there's good insight and data fed back into the business from marketing, then that really helps. I guess it helps people to understand the importance of marketing as a strategic driver and growth engine for the business, rather than just a function that puts kind of communications out.
Yeah, it's my job as the marketing director, especially in our own business and in other businesses that I've worked in, to demonstrate why what we're doing is important. We're generally in a lot of businesses one of the biggest spenders. like in terms of a cost center. So showing return on investment is critical, and I don't think that's ever been more important. And we have access to more data than ever before. We have access to more measurement than ever before, and
Mm.
it shouldn't always be decisions just for data, but there's always data to back up a decision. So, and that data will come in different forms, but it's my job as the marketing director to represent my department in terms of the value that we're adding to the bottom line of the business. It's a business at the end of the day, after all.
Right.
But
Right.
we've been in business for 50 years, almost 50 years now, with really brilliant brand sentiment attached to it from a customer perspective. So we've got to make sure that whatever we're doing that has a return on investment attached to it, and everything should. There's also the brand purpose front and center of each of those actions or each of those strategies, because I definitely believe that those two things, purpose and return on investment, have to work hand in hand.
Yeah, nice. And you touched a little bit in that response on how kind of data and measurement have changed, and you touched earlier on TikTok and new channels. So, I mean, at the heart of Benefit is obviously that customer experience, and as you said, the retail experience can go further, but you're trying to catch up the kind of digital experience to be as close as it can be to that. But how, for a luxury brand, which is very much about kind of feeling, kind of touch, feel, emotion, etc., how have you changed the way that you use customer data, technology, I don't know, first party data, marketing technology to change what you're doing within Benefit?
First party data is really important to us. So we are changing what we're doing by continuing to prioritize that, probably over index how much we're prioritizing on that for the moment, but also for the future. So that's been a really big shift, especially because we're a brand that's so broadly distributed. So driving a point of difference around your D2C to drive own data is an interesting challenge.
Yes, I can
Global
imagine.
challenge.
Yeah.
But it's really important. Like for as many physical counters that we have across the country, of which there are hundreds, we have 6 standalone boutiques, and we always treat the standalone brand boutique as our home. It's our house, our rules. We can have the music as loud as we
Mm,
want. We can paint the walls whatever color we want. We set the opening
mm.
times, and we treat our online D2C in exactly the same way. So that's never changed. But the level of investment we're putting there, even in terms of mental prioritization, is definitely changing the way we're doing business. But it's not to forget all the customers that we have up and down the country across many different sites. Like I said earlier, I think we're the most widely distributed premium beauty brand in the UK. But that goes back to our fundamental strategy of show up where the customer is. And there's always been a massive demand. So, we just keep meeting the demand. So, it's really important to us, going back to the purpose piece, that really does inform how we show up on every channel, because we won't activate in a space or on a channel if our customer isn't there and it's not right
Mhm.
for the brand. So, TikTok's a perfect example, because TikTok is built on, lo-fi, agile, humorous content. That is literally us in a can
Yeah, fits your
as
brand
a
very
brand.
well, doesn't it? Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. But we invest very differently in terms of winning on TikTok than we would in our own boutique. But the fundamental goal in terms of brand sentiment, brand awareness, brand connection is all the same.
Very interesting. Yeah, really interesting. And to your point, your North Star is delivering the best possible customer experience and making people feel the way you want them to. So actually, it sounds like data and tech are just tools in that journey to delivering on that experience.
Yeah.
So the last couple of questions I wanted to ask you, Lou, are a little bit more personal. And like when people are listening to people like yourself, they think, "Wow, Lou's got it all together. She kind of is all around the country all the time. She's working with all these departments. She's got it all down to a T." But of course, quite often, everyone's going on their own kind of development journey. Would you mind sharing a few things maybe that you're working on as a marketeer to improve personally?
Yeah, of course. I mean, the first thing I'd say is I think the day I have it all together is the day to finish up, because the job's never done, right? And I think that's the really exciting part of it. And also you can't go it alone. You just can't. And that's really fundamental to how we as a business work and how I work with the team I'm lucky enough to be part of, up and down, left and right. So yeah, the things I'm working on for myself, going back to what I said at the very start, perspective, because at the moment, everything's a worry, right, for everybody. Cost of
Yeah.
living, post-pandemic, consumer confidence, and women actually, on the consumer confidence index and where we
Mm.
currently sit as a nation, women sit 10 points lower. Like
Wow.
that, that's insane to me. That's something our GM has shared with us and is really, our GM's a massive advocate for women.
Mm.
That's insane to me in terms of that being the reality. So, perspective is really important. I serve a lot of people in my job, as in I have a big team. There's 40, 45 of us on the marketing team, but I'm also a service department to the rest of the
Yes.
business. I have to keep myself in check. And I don't just mean like standing, because that implies, you're burnt out, you're tired. But I have to keep
Yeah.
myself healthy and fresh and curious all the time, to have enough energy for everybody else. So actually, it's really important to me to make sure I've got my own energy first, and then, I can give enough energy to everybody else. I think as well, one of the learnings from the pandemic was the importance of creativity and nurturing creativity, because during the pandemic, it was all so functional. I
Mm.
mean, if you weren't talking about PPE or, like health and safety, or dealing with
Right.
real
Yeah.
life fears of your team, because you became the lighthouse for everybody that you worked with, because all we did was we spent so much time working, and that what we were trying to do, and people couldn't be with their families, etc. So the strength of the internal relationships in our business meant that you were a real support for everybody. But we killed creativity during the pandemic because we were on Zoom all the time, no matter what business you were in, and we were dealing with quite serious topics. And we're quite a light-hearted brand, even though we are very conscious about like CSR, and we didn't deliver an awful lot. But we weren't creative and we weren't being inspired. So the other thing that's really important to me is to make sure that there's time, because I think it was Bruce Daisy that said once, ideas live in the gaps between things. So to make sure there's
Mm.
always gaps between
Yeah.
things. And I took that was a real light bulb moment for me. I was like, okay, the measure of success of a day is not how busy the day is. It's about what space is there in that day for the good stuff. And then
That's it. Yeah.
the,
Excellent point.
yeah, and I think that is actually a real mindset shift, because that we, traditionally, especially as marketers, everybody's about like, the busy Olympics, like, oh, I'm busy, you're busy, like, oh, I think I'm busier. Actually having time to slow down and see what's happening around you is probably the biggest thing that I focus on, because so much happens between the lines, and appreciating the in-person connection, both with customers and with my own team and the rest of the business, and, all the store visits that we do, is another thing that I'm doing really differently, because you cannot take a temperature check of a person on a screen. And it's really important to me and to the business that I'm in to manage the whole person, especially across the marketing function, because we show up as our whole selves, or we should show up as our whole selves, because you
Mm.
should feel comfortable enough to do that. So, I probably spend as much time with my own team, who are an incredible team of marketers, on non-work related stuff, because it's about the whole picture, and you definitely can't have one without the other.
Wow. There was some really fabulous nuggets in there, Lou. Like making
I mean, I
sure.
think I also have to like get to my to-do list as well at the same time, but
Oh, no, but you're right.
yeah.
It's the way, it's how you make people feel and how you contribute to your team or customers that really makes the difference, not the hours that you're in a Teams meeting or writing PowerPoint, to your point. So I like some of the sentiment you shared there. And the final question I wanted to ask you, Lou, was beyond that great advice, like if you were giving advice to listeners that are kind of all walks of marketers, budding marketers, all the way up to kind of people that are in big jobs, like what advice would you kind of impart to others?
I think advice that's really stuck with me that I've heard before is, I'll give you two pieces. One, it'll be all right in the end, or else it's the end. So
Yeah.
Don't worry about things too much. Everything has a way of working itself out. Um, I think the other thing that's really important to me is that it's really it's really important to be vulnerable, because you have to be as much if you want to have authentic, genuine relationships with people that you work with, which you should, and hopefully you work in a business where you can do that, you have
Mm,
to be vulnerable yourself. And I know for me, my job as a marketing director is not to have all the answers. It's to know how to be surrounded by the people that do. And all of the people that I'm lucky enough to work alongside in my own team are all people that are so much smarter than I am. My contribution has been able to bring everyone together. It's
right.
not being the specialist in the 7 different disciplines that I am responsible for. It's the ability to bring people together across 7 different disciplines and create a harmony where, well, certainly hope I do, but like create a harmony where we can create some really good stuff together. So that's been a really important piece of advice someone gave me years ago. And sometimes I think when you're in certain positions, you think, oh, I have to know it all, and it's all about bravado,
Yeah.
and I can't ever show weakness. And I think that is the fundamental downfall of some of the leaders, or people as leaders. I think it's so important to be vulnerable and know that you shouldn't ever be the smartest person in the room.
Absolutely. No, and you articulated that beautifully, that actually the moment you're starting to become a leader is when you realize it's not about being the smartest person in the room, and you become a multiplier by actually leaving space and encouraging
Yeah.
others and lifting them up. And so, no, I really wholeheartedly agree with you. And yeah, I've really enjoyed the conversation, Lou, because you've taken us from the importance of a brand having a clear purpose and living it, and the real kind of hyper focus on customer experience and working cross functionally and actually making things happen so that they do turn up in the right way to a customer, whether they're in store or behind a laptop, but also to talent within your business. And another theme that I can see coming clearly from you as an individual, but it feels like also from Benefit, is this authenticity and kind of real humanity about the business, in how you work with your team and how you try to show up to customers. And I think that's very refreshing, because quite often marketing can get hidden behind lots of jargon and lots of interesting, exciting PowerPoints. But the actual truth is that it's about, to your point, it's about emotionally connecting with people and making them feel that they should act or they should buy into a particular brand. And Benefit sounds like a great place to work. So thank you for your time.
Yeah, pleasure. Nice to talk to you, Paul.
Yeah, really appreciate it. Thanks for tuning in to another episode of Time for a Reset. I hope you enjoyed this one as much as I did. We'll be back talking to a senior marketeer very soon. Make sure you don't miss out on any new episodes by subscribing on Apple, Spotify or SoundCloud, and leave us a review at timeforareset.co.uk.